my first time making this. You're along for the journey. Maybe I'm worried my little bowl might be a little too little. It smells so good. Oh, bless. Do you guys like coffee cake? I know it's kind of like an old-timey kind of dessert, but it's super nostalgic, it's simple, it's delicious. It reminds me of when I was younger, going to visit an older lady who I called her grandma, and we'd go over for coffee. And I don't know if we ever really had coffee cake for coffee, but for some reason it still reminds me of that. So that's what we're making today. I have the oven preheating to 350 degrees, and first things first, we're going to get our crumb topping assembled. So for that, we're going to get a small bowl. We need 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour. And we're going to spoon it into our measuring cup. So 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. We need 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar. Our recipe, which is from the Food Network website, says to use light brown sugar, but I only have dark brown sugar, and I think it's going to turn out just fine using dark brown instead of light brown. Maybe I'm worried my little bowl might be a little too little, but that's nothing new. I'm a bad judge of how big of a bowl I need. All right, 2/3 cup packed brown sugar, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and our recipe calls for a pinch of salt when using unsalted butter, but I am using salted butter, so I think I'm going to leave the pinch of salt out. So we need softened butter, room temperature, not melted, room temperature, and we need 5 tablespoons. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And since we're going to be making a crumble, I'm cutting it into pats of butter as I put it into my nearly overflowing bowl. But I think my crumble will condense a little bit as I combine everything together. There we go. All of our crumbly deliciousness in a bowl. Now, if you have a pastry cutter, is that what it's called? It looks like someone took a whisk and made it into like a rocker shape, and they're all in one line. They don't crisscross like a whisk does. That is an excellent tool to get this all, to cut all of the butter into the rest. But a fork will work, a knife will work, your hands will work as well. So as you work in the butter, you are going to get little clumps of crumble. Once you have all of your butter worked in, it will look like maybe small peas, the size of small peas. But I'll show you when I'm done. All right, so once you have no more pockets of white and it looks kind of like brown sugar, and if you pinch some of it, it'll kind of stick together. That's what you want. And for reference, go with a medium bowl. Small bowl, a little too small. So we're just gonna set this aside. We will need this later. All right, on to making the actual cake. You can do this in 2 separate bowls. One where you have the dry ingredients in one bowl, and then we mix the wet ingredients in another bowl. That's how you should do it. But for today, I'm just going to do it my way when I'm feeling lazy and I only want to use one bowl. And so the ingredients tell us to mix or whisk together our dry ingredients and set those aside, but I'm not going to do that. Again, the recipe will be linked below, so if you want to follow it step by step, it'll be there for you to reference, but this is just how I'm going to do it today. So we have 8 tablespoons or 1 stick of softened butter. We're going to get that into a large bowl. We're going to cream that together with 1 cup of white sugar. If you have an electric mixer, that would be great for this. Back to the crumb topping. If you have a food processor, the food processor would be a perfect tool to mix this together real quick. But back to where we were at. Stand mixer, hand mixer will make this process go much quicker, creaming our butter and our white sugar together. But I don't have either, so I'm just going old school and using a wooden spoon. All right, so once your butter and sugar are light and fluffy, or until you're tired, I'm not saying, I'm just saying, if you can get it till it's light and fluffy, do that. Now we add in our eggs. So we have 2 large eggs, room temperature if you remember and make the time for it. Just 1 at a time, just so they're really well incorporated. 1 down, 1 to go. All right, once it's all well mixed, we need our vanilla. So the recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. If you don't have pure and you just have imitation, that's fine too. And just get that all mixed in. So now, since I did not mix together my dry ingredients, my flour, baking soda, baking powder, and salt, I'm going to add in my baking powder, my baking soda, and my salt now, before we add in the flour and the sour cream. So we need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. I'm using my half measure in case anyone's worried. So 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a half teaspoon of baking soda, and I forgot, I like to sprinkle it over when I put it in the bowl just to start the evenly distributing process. And then a half teaspoon of fine salt. And I used salted butter, whereas they called for unsalted butter, so I'm going to use just shy of a half teaspoon. And when they say fine salt, I'm just using my normal iodized salt that most of us keep in the kitchen, instead of like a coarse kosher salt. So give that a real good stir. Make sure you have no dry ingredients hanging out. Even when it looks like it's all mixed in, give it a good stir just to make sure it's all evenly distributed throughout our wet mixture. So now we need 2 cups of flour and 1 cup of sour cream. Now, we're supposed to add our dry ingredients and the sour cream in alternately in 3 batches. So we're gonna start with some of our flour, go to our sour cream, and repeat that 2 more times afterwards. So this is more complicated when we're measuring our flour. You know what we can do? You can put your 2 cups of flour in another bowl. Let me help us out here. So let's put our 2 cups of flour into a bowl so that we don't lose count of our flour. Again, make sure you're spooning it into your measuring cup. The flour compacts down if you were to scoop it right out of your container. And then you're gonna have too much flour, which is going to give you a dry cake. All right, so here's our 2 cups of white flour, all-purpose flour. And then we need 1 cup of sour cream. This is not sponsored by this brand, don't worry. It's just what I prefer because there's only one ingredient which is cream. There's no additives, there's no preservatives. You just get what they tell you get. So 1 cup, I'm using full fat. Full fat has the most flavor. You can use light, fat-free. Do they have fat-free sour cream or just low fat? Whatever you want to use. So 1 cup, ready to go. All right, so we're gonna estimate about 1/3 of our flour. Get that mixed in. Just until it's incorporated. We don't want to overmix. We don't want a chewy cake. So minimal mixing helps us get a fluffier cake. So then let's get in about 1/3 of our sour cream. And this is gonna make our coffee cake nice and moist. All right, and then just half of what's remaining of our flour, approximately. About half of what's left of our sour cream. The last of our flour. Make sure you scrape down to the bottom. And then the last of our sour cream. And then I like to keep my spatula on standby for when we need to scrape out our bowl to get our cake into our pan. All right, once everything is incorporated, there's no dry flour, there are no big streaks of sour cream in your cake batter. I'm tempted to give it a little taste test. Is that okay? Ooh, that is lovely. I have high hopes for this. This is my first time making this recipe, so you're along for the journey with me. Okay, let's get out an 8x8 baking dish. I have a glass 8x8 baking dish. If you have an 8x8 square cake pan, that will work. You can grease it, you can spray it with Pam, you can rub it with oil, you can butter it and flour it if you want. I'm using parchment paper. It's just my go-to. Okay, all set. Once your pan is prepared, remember our oven is preheated to 350, so if you haven't done that, go do that real quick. All right, so now we are told to spoon our coffee cake batter into our prepared dish. As you can see, it's a pretty thick cake mix. It doesn't just pour out. So we're gonna end up smoothing it a little bit. This is where handy dandy spatula comes in handy. Of course, you can always get out a clean one. But let's be real, sometimes all the rest of your spatulas are dirty. All right, and then don't leave any of that delicious cake batter in your bowl unless you have plans to clean your bowl out by yourself, if you know what I mean. But for the rest of us, let's scrape it out and then do your best to smooth it out so that it's nice and flat on top. Or it doesn't have to be nice and flat, but that's my goal. All right, so once you've done the best you can do, or the best you want to do, let's bring back our crumble. And I'm excited about how much crumble we have here because that means we're gonna have a nice healthy layer on top of our coffee cake. So you can do it by hand. I'm gonna take a spoon and just put a nice even layer all over the top of our coffee cake. I feel like we're gonna have same height layers of coffee cake as we are our crumble. Not complaining, but no need to be stingy. There's plenty to go all the way around. Oh my gosh, there's so much. Maybe, you know how some coffee cakes have that layer of crumble in between? I think you could totally do that with this cake. There's so much crumble. Once your cake has been thoroughly crumbled, into the oven for 1 hour. Can I tell you how amazing my kitchen smells right now? So our coffee cake has been in the oven for a full hour. I got out my little toothpick to taste it, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to stab all the way down. So if you don't have a cake tester, use a butter knife or a knife that's relatively thin. So we want our knife or our cake tester to come out clean. And mine still has some wet dough batter on it, so I'm gonna put it back in for just a little bit. We'll start with 5 minutes. I don't want to overcook it. All right, let's give it another go. Handy dandy cake tester. Ooh, yep, clean. All right, be patient. Let it sit in the pan for 20 minutes and then we'll remove it. So patience. I know it's super tempting to cut a nice warm piece of coffee cake. It's gonna smell amazing, your house is gonna smell amazing, but let it cool. It's much easier to cut when it's cooled a little bit, so patience. All right, this is the moment. Are you ready? Okay, we're supposed to invert this onto a plate. So I think I'm gonna do that because I think I will rip my parchment if I don't. So get out a big plate. If you don't have a big plate, a cookie sheet would work just fine. If you need help, ask for it. Okay. Beautiful. And then we're supposed to let it cool on supposed to let it cool on a wire rack, but if you know me, I don't have one. But I'm gonna take my parchment off first before I put it onto my cutting board. Beautiful. And we're not even looking at the top. Oh, it smells so good. Well, that was satisfying, and we're not even to the eating part yet. Okay. I'm scared I don't want to smush it. Oh, bless. A little messy, but that's okay. All right, let's get some crumbs cleaned up. Would you look at that? Would you look at that? Okay, I like a corner piece. Are corner pieces okay? I'm gonna do it anyway. Oh, look at that. Wow. Let me get this piece out for you. And let us get a close-up of that crumb. I cannot exactly define that word for you, but it seems to be the right word this time. If you can explain to me what the crumb of a baked good is, leave a comment down below. Being this is coffee cake, I think it appropriate for you to get out a cup of coffee. I just don't have one today, but you should have one. Or tea. Or neither if you're not a coffee drinker. Let's give it a taste. That's nice. Not too sweet. That crumb on top is awesome. Like I mentioned earlier, I think next time I would do about half the batter in my pan, and then maybe half the crumble, and then the rest. Oh, see, that's so difficult because it's such a thick cake batter. But it would be nice to have a little bit of the crumble in the middle, but delicious. Yum. And it's not sickly sweet. I was honestly expecting it to be a little bit sweeter, but it's perfect. It's nice, delicately sweet. Again, perfect to go with your coffee. One person who made this left a comment on the Food Network website, and they said they cut the coffee cake into serving size pieces, wrapped it in wax paper, stuck it in a freezer zip top bag, and stuck it in the freezer, and they said it defrosted very well. So if you have a lot left, which you might not, especially if you're sharing it with people, but if you have leftovers, we are told that it freezes and then thaws well. So a little tip for you guys. But like I said, I will leave the recipe link down below for you. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more recipes from me, hit that subscribe button and that bell so that you know when I drop the next video every Saturday. And I'll see you guys next time. Enjoy!